So the other one that you can do is a downer. So a downer is the exact opposite as a riser. So you would follow all the same steps, but you would do it would slow down. It would go shoo dum 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 dum. It would slow down with time, and it would lower in pitch with time. So theoretically, again, coming up with this on the spot. So theoretically, I don't know if this is going to work very well. I think it will, though. Theoretically, if I take this riser and I reverse my riser, it will be a downer. That is absolutely a downer if I've ever heard one. In this case, I would probably run it through some kind of reverb and make it slightly more interesting. Probably not that much reverb because that's insane. And I might even go even further with it. And like once it's here, maybe drop the pitch even more. So like, again, we're just doing the same thing we did before for the riser, but we're doing the entire process in reverse. So what if I take this already now designed sound, and I, let's see, set it to right mode, and then I drop the pitch even more as it goes. Right. So if I were to create a rise or a downer even further, what if I want this sound, but I don't want it to sound just like the inverted riser? Well, I would probably just add another layer. So the layer can be anything. There are already very good sound effects and stuff for this. Let's go to Devastator Warzone. This thing already has a bunch of good downers and stuff built into it, so I won't use them, but I'll show you them. But let's say I take one of these, say I take one of the bass sounds from Warzone. Yeah, that one's kind of disgusting. Let's take that. Okay, I'm going to render this to audio. Okay, so we have this rendered to audio. Now you'll notice a problem here. What's the problem? This sound effect doesn't go as long as this does. So I don't really care if I stretch this, there's going to be effectively samples missing in the stretching. And the missing samples are going to make it sound like it's artifacting. But for our sound design purpose, it doesn't matter that it's artifacting that much. We can lean into the artifacting, or we can cover it up with like a reverb or something like that. So it's going to be a Warzone bass. Going to take it here, and we could just combine them, but what I'm going to do is decrescendo it. I'm going to go over to the audio thing again. Let's take inner pitch, and I'm going to go ahead and write and make this one's pitch also go down as we do this. So kind of interesting, right? I don't like the drastic crescendo or decrescendo on that. Cool. So these two together, we already have sort of an interesting sound. We could actually take this further though, and take that same tremolo thing that we'd used earlier, where we started low and built up high. What if we started high and brought it down? So it's high right now. What we're gonna do, sounds like every downer you've ever heard in your life, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm going to unsolo it. Right, and so that's a downer. And so downers are actually used very similarly to risers, where they are transitionatory moments and then something big and epic happens after, like a big bass drum hit or whatever. But theoretically, what I would then do is take these two things, get their section here. I would probably, normally I would probably send them to a group of their own that they could be modified on their own. But in this situation, I actually don't need to because I'm not modifying it any further. Go to export. Let me go to like C minor downer, right? Pretty cool. I'm going to render that out. Going to make sure it is adding the audio track to the file. It's going to be pretty simple. And suddenly we have Something swelled right there at the end. I don't know what that was, actually. What swelled right there? Oh, my pad started playing from my pads folder. That's a big mistake. I'll just chop that off because it doesn't actually matter that much. So we've got a downer here. Pretty sick, right? Like, it didn't actually take us that much work to do the risers or the downers. It's the crescendo decrescendo idea, multiple layers, movement, and pitch shifting. That's really kind of all it is. And those kind of sound effects are used all the time in music. The other things that you can do are what are called braams. These were basically popularized by Inception. Everyone knows the basic sound of them. It is just the brah sound, and they've been used in movie trailers and films and stuff almost relentlessly since Inception released. That sound itself is actually very simple. I almost don't even want to show it, but I'll just do it for the sake of it because I'll show you how unbelievably simple it is. So you're basically just going to take some really aggressive brass, because the core of the sound is typically brass, some really aggressive synth bass thing, combine the sounds, make them into something interesting. So let's just do bass trombones for this because I know my bass trombones are very aggressive. Let's do tuba because I know tuba is the standard low brass instrument. So tuba, and then bass trombone, and they can just be legatos. And then let me take something from, I could take something from Massive X again. Let me find some kind of synth bass or something here. Let's see, bass. I'm just gonna pick something, Beach Walker. No, that's not it. Big Cheeks, Art Duo. No. You want something really like saw wavy, square wavy, aggressive kind of stuff? That has a hit on it, and I actually kind of like that it has a hit on it. I'm gonna keep that. So I'm gonna call that synth bass 1, because a lot of times a braam will have a hit on it. It'll be like a percussion hit and then the brass and synth bass and everything. And then I'll do one more layer. Let's do something. I don't know. Let me just find something that I have in my library here. Anything aggressive, bassy, strong, anything weird at all. Let me see. You know what? Let's get weird with it. Maybe. Do we want to get super weird with it? Let's just try it. That's what sound design is. Sound design is about playing with the sounds and make something interesting. So this is not a typical bass sound that I would do, but I do kind of want to add it. So I'm going to add thrill here. And then let me just go ahead, and I'm duplicating this just to get one more bass synth sound thing. Let us do... Surely there's something in 25. It's going to be slightly older sounding, probably. That's cool. That'll work. So I'm actually going to make my life really easy here. I'm going to take all of these. Oh. My tuba is not playing for some reason. It's because it's not set to tuba, because it's set to the other thing. So I'm actually just going to do this really simply. I'm going to take all of these. This is 25. That's not thrill. I'm going to take all of these and literally just play a C on the downbeat here. Or let me do it. Let me mute that pads folder. Let me go to measure 12. And just play a big fat octave C, or just a C or something. Yep. Cool. So we've sort of got this idea. Now we went a little weirder with it because we have thrill in here, and thrill is not a typical part of that. So I'm going to bury that in there just so it's a movement part of the texture. And then I could sound design all of these myself and render them to audio and do all the things, but I don't really need to. What I can do is process them as their own individual thing. So I'm going to call this a braam. I'm going to create a bus, right? Creating a bus, creating a group, sending all of these to braam. And then with the braam on there, they're all going to that individual bus. I can go over to that bus, wherever that is, over here, gonna be this one, and then just make my own interesting sounds with it, right? So first thing I'll probably do, put an EQ on here and decide what frequencies I want and don't want. That's way too subby, so I don't want all of that. Probably don't need all of the top end, but maybe. Yep. And then if I just add like some distortion, I don't know, let me run it through something metal and gross and fuzzy. Yep. Typically I think I would do even more to this. So let me add, I think I need another layer. So let's add something already kind of nasty and disgusting to really help build this layer happen. So I wonder if I add a cello, but I like really mess up this cello. So what if I run it through Fury? And run it through like Guitar Rig, and run it through like a bass amp or something before it even, like, so it's running through a distortion, and then I'm gonna run it through like a bass amp. And then I send that to the braam group, and then I just copy this MIDI information to that. That is obviously just like way too loud now. Yeah, it's still a bit too loud, but you're starting to get the picture. And then I can control everything here. I can definitely like run all of this through whatever I want, probably add a little bit of reverb on it, get the mix lower, stuff like that. And realistically, I would probably go with even more brass. So add some tenor trombones there too. You guys have basically all heard that sound before, sometime within the past 15 years. That sound, there's a million different ways to do it. And in fact, there are plugins that have this stuff already built in. I will show you, same thing. So like Devastator Warzone is a free one that I've shown you many, many times. But there are braams and stuff in here, I believe. Oh, maybe there's not. Maybe it's built into Trailer Hits. Oh, maybe there aren't braams in here, but there's a lot of risers and hits and stuff that you can use to make braams. There are signals and sirens. So that kind of stuff, I'm showing you that kind of stuff, not so that you rely on this kind of stuff yourself, because those things are great to use and I definitely use them, but more so that you can know what are cool sound effects and stuff to make and then reference them and write them yourself, right? So the next interesting thing to do is just general sound design of taking any sample source and making it your own. So if I were to, let's just do it with drums. So let's say I'm taking a drum groove. Okay. Let's say, I don't remember exactly how to do this, but I think I can. Yep. So essentially what Studio Drummer allowed me to do right there is take the MIDI information of that groove that I was on. But let's say hypothetically I got this sample from another library, or I grabbed it from Splice or whatever, which I don't recommend in those situations, from Splice or another library or whatever, leaving this as is, because this is a loop or a groove that anyone can use at any point in time. While you might own it because you own the library or whatever, it's not very original, you didn't write it, it's not creative. And so one of the solutions that you can do with something like this, aside from stealing the groove and just like playing the same groove with your own instruments. That'd be a cool way of getting around it. But one of the things that you could do is you could render it to audio, right? And let's just render it as dry. And so now we have this drum groove. Like, let's say hypothetically, this is our drum loop that we've got going here, right? Well, one of the ways that I could keep this rhythm and this pulse and make it my own thing is just by doing all of these sound design techniques that I've talked about thus far. So again, we're keeping it pretty basic, but one of the things that I might do is, one, what if we cut out the lows, and so we turn this into more of a mid-level instrument. So cut out the lows, cut out the highs, and let's take a look at that. Right, now, already, because I heard myself do it, I'm going to automate stuff and make this more interesting. So I'm going to go into write mode, and I'm going to just open and close this as we go. Cool. So now I have this like cool automation thing going with this, and I think technically, if Cubase does this correctly as I think, yep, it copies my automation information. Now it's like super cool. So we've restarted the phrase right there. So when we restart the phrase, we should put a riser, right? So what if we took this riser from earlier and like put this right over here? Now we're just getting cheeky. But like, what if we and we allowed that in there, so. And typically you would need some kind of hit right there. So maybe you would need like a braam. Now we're just adding everything. I'm just going to put this in, but we don't actually want this right now, so. Okay, a little extreme, but you're getting the idea of what the riser and stuff would be like for that. Anyway, I got sidetracked. Totally sidetracked. So the real thing though is by just doing the EQ, that's not enough, right? That is a cool way of doing things. And so it's got all this read information on it now. And it's just doing the EQ, and the EQ is reading this filter sweep, open and close, right? The next thing that I would do is add more rhythmic elements too. So let's go back to our boy Transcape. And what if we like did a 30-second note pattern, but we did like we could do a full mix, and you'll hear what that sounds like. Pretty 90s, I think, right? But you can do like a half mix, and you can make it like a triplet half mix. So it's like this standard 4/4 groove, but there's like this 16th note triplet thing going on top of it, right? Something that I might do, same thing I showed you guys earlier. This is me, Fury. Let me like randomize this thing here. I'm honestly sort of just messing with settings that I don't really fully understand, but that's sort of sound design. That's cool, right? Like, look at that cool sound we made. Is it the same thing? Not exactly, but it's cool. One of the other things that you could do, same thing we did earlier with like chopper. And what was the other one? Tremolo. Distort it. What if we took this even further? What if we reversed this original idea, and or actually reversed every other one? So like reverse. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't like it with the chopper and tremolo as much. Now I'm just playing around with it. What if I mess with the formant? Now we've got more sweeping motion going on, basically. That's pretty cool. I don't even know what Metalizer does. What even is this? Explore the tools in your DAW, people. Oh, I had write on. So you guys firsthand witnessed me experiencing a mess up. I was writing when I didn't intend to write, and I just meant to have the parameters guy. So yeah, that's the basics. So that's going to be the basics of musical sound design. Ooh, a wah-wah. Let's... Kind of interesting. That's going to be the basics of musical sound design, is designing things and editing things in your own way with all the different tools in your toolkit. It's not uncommon for me to, for example, run things through an entire like an entire guitar rig, basically. Not pun intended with guitar rig, but like literally if I go to this and I go to, I don't know, rock, and I get like a tight and chunky rock amp sim with screamer and stuff on it, and I put it on here. So again, it's like, it's a really weird, it's an interesting sound. Learning how things are going to react, like learning how pulses and distortions and choppers and tremolos and reverbs and delays and everything else is going to react. And that's actually something that we didn't add on here. Why didn't we do a delay? So what if we did like a very common one? What if we did like a dotted eighth note delay on our drums here? So dotted eighth note. That's cool. Yeah. So again, I don't want to belabor the point because we've already been going for an entire hour here on just the basics of sound design. This is really basic stuff. Braams, risers, downers, reverses, all of those different things. That's really basic stuff. But these are all the things that you can do to, one, make your music more interesting, make it more unique. And technically, every time you make a new sound, you can add it to your own library, if you will, and just like pop those sounds in to your next projects and stuff as needed, because you own those sounds. That's your unique sound profile. Nobody else can theoretically use them. And then if you are using things like loops that are pre-written and stuff, I strongly encourage you to heavily modify them. I would never recommend anyone do anything with like Splice or Co-Producer or anything like that that are just other people's samples. Even I will straight up show you, even the stuff that I have that like, I think it like 40's very own drums. I think it's one of those. I don't even know because I don't even use them anymore. But like the things that are loops already, it's not solo, but like, right? I technically paid for this, but because it's a pre-programmed groove and pre-programmed loop, I don't use it unless I heavily edit it, which is why like I almost don't even use them, because I know I'm going to have to edit them enough to make them sound like my own unique thing. And that's just part of the game of being a composer, being an orchestrator, all of those things. You want the stuff that you do to be unique, identifiable as unique. You don't want other people to hear a musical idea, a harmonic idea, a melodic idea, loop, kit, anything that they've heard before and pick up on it and be like, oh, they just took this from here. You never want to do that. And as time goes on, people will begin to recognize libraries and stuff that you use. As your ears get better, you will start to notice things, and you'll be able to tell like, hey, I recognize that person is using BBC Symphony Orchestra, or that person is using something from the Project Sam Free Orchestra. That has literally happened to me before. I have used something from the Project Sam Free Orchestra, and then like a year later or something, heard that same sound effect on a metal record I was listening to. And I was like, oh, we took that from the same place. Kind of wish I had modified it so that it didn't sound like, or kind of wish they had modified it or whatever, so that it didn't sound like we were using the same stuff. So that's the basics of sound design. We talked about pads, talked about braams, risers, downers, all of those different things. Hope this was helpful. And also make sure that you modify anything that you are working on so that it is not easily identifiable and easily recognizable as something that you technically did not write. As a default rule, write everything yourself and you'll be good. Hope you guys enjoyed the basic sound design. Maybe we'll do a more advanced one day. Maybe we won't.